A NASA scientist has released what may be the clearest footage ever captured of an unidentified flying object.
Okay, now, I believe, according to your earlier conversation, that you had experienced a UFO sighting and supposedly had received either some injury or certain contact from that. Miss Cash, would you start off first and tell me exactly the date and what happened and where you were at and so forth?
Yes. It was on Farm Market Road 1485 between New Caney and Huffman, approximately between 9 and 9:30 at night on December the 29th, 1980.
The case traces back to 1980, when 3 witnesses encountered a strange craft and documented it on camera.
We kept watching it. We couldn't figure out what it was, not ever dreaming that we were going to run dead into it. But all of a sudden, when we got out on this country road, it just sat down, almost level with the treetops. Well, it had lit up the entire sky.
The images weren't disproven. They were dismissed. Years later, after government explanations failed to account for the evidence, the scientist reopened the original investigation. What he found is why this footage is being seen for the first time.
My lips were swollen, my ears were swollen about 3 times. Well, in fact, my entire body. My family didn't recognize me. When they came to the hospital, they told them what room I was in. They said had they not known for sure that it was me, they wouldn't have known me.
3 people face a UFO.
They'd forgotten that it was the holidays. There were no big old places open. They tried to. Neither one was open that night, and they gave up eventually and decided they were going to drive home.
On the night of December 29, 1980, Betty Cash was driving her Oldsmobile along a quiet back road near Huffman, Texas. She was heading home after a dinner with her friend Vicki Landrum and Vicki's young grandson, 7-year-old Colby. The road was dark, the trees were thick, and it was late, around 9:20 p.m. They didn't realize that everything was going to change for them. At first, none of them paid much attention when Vicki saw a bright light above the treetops ahead. In the distance, it looked like a blazing object falling from the sky, like an airplane in trouble or a fire.
We're driving. They see something bright in the distance, low to the ground, through the treetops, that is hard to distinguish, what this is. All they know is it's very bright.
They thought it was something ordinary and suspected it was a plane coming in to land at the Houston airport, which wasn't too far away.
They thought maybe this is just some ordinary aircraft that's approaching on a particularly strange flight path, or perhaps taking a pass over the countryside.
Houston Intercontinental Airport was down south of them by maybe 30 or 35 miles, and there were some military and other facilities, relatively nearby.
But as they drove closer, the light didn't get smaller like it would if it was far away. Instead, it seemed to stay right in front of them, glowing brighter and bigger as they rounded a curve in the road. Vicki looked out the windshield and suddenly realized it wasn't just a light, but it was coming from something strange and solid. The object was diamond-shaped, massive, and hanging in the air just above the tops of the trees. It didn't make the kind of sound a plane does. There was a roaring noise, a deep, engine-like sound, and every so often flames shot out from the bottom, scorching the ground beneath it. Even from inside the car, the heat was so intense that the air inside felt unbearably hot. Hotter than any heater setting could explain. Betty slowed the car and then stopped it altogether when Vicki warned that if they went too close, it might burn them. Colby was sitting in the back seat, and he became so scared that he started to cry. He could also feel the heat, and it made the whole moment feel unreal and frightening for the kid. For a few minutes, none of them moved. They just sat and stared, trying to make sense of what was in front of them. Vicky, who was a deeply religious woman, found herself thinking of her faith. In that strange glow and fame, her mind went straight to what she had read. She whispered to Colby that maybe this was the second coming of Jesus. She thought that what she was seeing was something divine. But then, something even more unexpected happened. As the object hovered there, several helicopters appeared overhead. They looked large and military style, and they moved in formation around the glowing craft. At first, the helicopters seemed to come right out of the darkness, surrounding the object as if they were guiding it or chasing it. When she saw the helicopters, Vicky started to rethink what she saw. If this was something spiritual, why would military aircraft be chasing it? For a tense moment, the three of them watched this strange UFO that began to seem like it was out of space, the heat, and the circling helicopters. Once they got home, they realized what they had seen wasn't the end, but only the beginning.
Was it a military operation, perhaps a secret operation, something that was classified and yet was accidentally seen by these three witnesses in a rural part of Texas?
Illnesses and injuries. After that strange night on the road near Huffman, Texas, nothing was quite the same for Betty Cash, Vicky Landrum, and young Colby. They finally made it home after seeing the glowing object and the helicopters, but within hours of returning, all three began to feel sick in ways they had never been before. At first, it was a dull ache in the stomach, a heaviness that didn't make sense after a normal dinner and a car ride. Then the nausea turned into vomiting, and the burning sensation on their skin started getting worse instead of fading away. Betty had stood the longest outside and was the closest to the strange craft, and they noticed that she was hit the hardest. By that night, she couldn't put her food down. Her head felt like it was pounding. Her eyes became painfully sensitive, and the skin on her face and neck began to redden and blister, as if she had been left in the sun all day. Vicky and Colby felt similar symptoms, but theirs were less intense. They felt bad stomach trouble, skin that felt raw, and a burning in their eyes. Still, it was very scary for all three, especially for a child. The next morning, Vicky woke up and saw that the blisters on her own skin had grown, and she knew that something was seriously wrong. She went to check on Betty at her house and found her friend in terrible condition. She was barely conscious. Her skin was blistered, and large patches of hair were missing. Betty's once familiar face looked swollen and shocked, and she could hardly stand on her own. It was clear she needed medical help beyond what they could give her at home. On January 3, 1981, Betty was taken to Parkay Hospital in Houston. The doctors were puzzled by what they saw. Her symptoms looked like severe burns, but they didn't match any normal sunburn or heat injury. Large blisters covered her skin, she had lost clumps of hair, and her eyes were still sore from inflammation. Some doctors later described her condition as resembling radiation poisoning, though they could not say for sure where it had come from. She was so weak that walking was almost impossible, and she stayed in the hospital for many days as they tried to treat her. Vicky and Colby were also examined, and even if their injuries weren't as serious as Betty's, they continued to struggle. Vicky's skin remained sore. She developed problems with her eyesight, and she experienced ongoing fatigue. Colby, at only 7 years old, suffered nightmares and ongoing weakness. For all three, the effects remained with them. They carried the memory of that night with them and the fear of the unknown. It changed how they saw the roads at night, how they reacted to loud noises, and how they spoke about their experiences. So, they decided to ask the government for help, and when they didn't help, a NASA scientist decided to step in. Contacting UFO Research Group. After all the fear, sickness, and uncertainty that followed their strange encounter on December 29, 1980, Vicki Landrum and Betty Cash felt ignored. They had called government agencies, local officials, and even tried to reach out to the military, hoping someone would tell them what they had seen and why it had made them so sick. Instead, they were met with silence or confusion. Phone calls weren't returned, letters went unanswered, and even local authorities seemed unsure how to respond. They needed answers, and the official channels offered none. Left without support from the government, Vicki decided to call a civilian UFO research group. At first, she wasn't sure what to expect, but she just knew she couldn't sit back and pretend nothing had happened. The call connected her to people who would listen and take her seriously. Among those inspired to look into the incident was John F. Schuessler, an aerospace engineer with NASA who also spent time investigating UFO reports. Unlike the other government officials who had brushed off the case, Schuessler really wanted to understand what really happened. When Schuessler arrived in Texas, he didn't rush to judgment. He started by listening to Vicki, Betty, and then to others in the area who might have something to say. He walked the stretch of road where the encounter happened, trying to trace the moments the women described. He retraced their steps, took notes, and spoke with locals. What he found was more than a story said by two old ladies and a child. He found other independent eyewitnesses in the area confirming that they had seen unusual lights or heard strange sounds that same night. That means it wasn't just the trio imagining things, but other people had noticed it too. At the exact section of the road where Vicki and Betty had stopped their car, Schuessler couldn't believe it when he saw scorch marks on the pavement, almost like something very hot had touched or hovered over it. The surface looked different from the undamaged asphalt nearby, and locals said the area had once looked burned before it was repaved. Schuessler believed this could be physical evidence of whatever might have landed there. Schuessler didn't stop at just one visit. He documented the scene, spoke with more witnesses, took notes and photographs, and kept searching for patterns and proof. His work became the backbone of the case in UFO research circles because it took the story beyond just 3 accounts. Here was someone with a scientific background who was willing to follow the evidence wherever it led, even if it didn't fit a simple explanation. With all the overwhelming evidence, all eyes were on the government to give a response. Well, their answer was that there was nothing else. Official response and government interaction. Before getting help from the NASA scientist Schuessler, who later released the Clearest UFO footage, Cash and Landrum tried to get help from the government. They reached out to local authorities first, but those calls didn't lead to any answers or real support. Then, on the advice of their U.S. senators, they contacted the Judge Advocate Claims Office at Bergstrom Air Force Base to formally report what they had seen and the harm they believed it had caused. When they first spoke with Air Force personnel at Bergstrom, the atmosphere was awkward and confusing. Officials listened politely as the witnesses described a diamond-shaped object and the dozens of helicopters they believed had been present that night, but they offered no real confirmation. In fact, the interviews quickly revealed that the Air Force had no record of any aircraft or operations matching the witnesses' description in the area on December 29th. The base representatives suggested that the women should consider hiring a lawyer and pursue compensation through administrative or legal channels. But they were clear that the military itself did not have any information to back up the claims. As the weeks passed, Cash and Landrum decided to do just that. They found an attorney willing to take on her case and filed a lawsuit against the United States government. Their complaint, filed in 1982, sought millions of dollars in damages, asserting that some kind of government aircraft or experimental craft might have caused their injuries, and that the military had a duty to protect civilians from harm. But in response, the government mounted a strong legal defense. Attorneys for the Air Force, Army, Navy, NASA, and other agencies submitted sworn statements and testimony saying simply that no branch of the U.S. military or government owned or operated any aircraft like the one described. The government also said that no helicopters matching the witnesses' reports were flying in the area that night. The statements were official responses from several high-ranking offices within the Pentagon and other agencies. Part of the government's legal argument rested on a concept called sovereign immunity, which protects the United States from being sued unless clear evidence proves that the government was directly responsible for the harm. Unfortunately, the witnesses could not produce documents, logs, flight plans, or records proving that the U.S. military had aircraft over Huffman, Texas, that evening. The court took the side of the government. By August 1986, a U.S. District Court judge ruled that there was no basis to hold the federal government liable for the incident. The judge concluded that the plaintiffs had failed to show that the object or helicopters were owned, controlled, or operated by the U.S., so the lawsuit was dismissed and the Friends did not get any compensation. Despite the statement by the government, which stated that the strange craft was not for them, Schuessler already had the evidence, although he didn't expect that it would soon disappear. Evidence handling and conspiracy claims. After their frightening experience and the painful illness that followed, Cash, Landrum, and Colby decided to partner with the NASA scientist to find physical evidence. According to Schuessler, the highway surface showed signs of intense heat damage, like it had been scorched by something extremely hot above it. Witnesses described asphalt that looked softened or burned, and even spots that seemed unlike the rest of the road, as if fire had touched it directly. These impressions became important because they suggested that whatever was in the sky wasn't just bright, but it also affected the ground below. John Schuessler, the NASA aerospace engineer who took a serious interest in this case, and took other researchers to the site. He didn't believe it when he found out that there were many witnesses, and he reported that the section of FM 1485 where the witnesses said the object hovered had a distinct surface that looked like it had been exposed to extreme heat. He took photographs of the heat pattern and treated it as proof of the shocking event. But something curious happened. That very stretch of road with the stretch marks ended up dug up and repaved. People claimed that in the dark of night, crews in unmarked trucks removed the old asphalt and replaced it with fresh pavement. Some witnesses said the workers covered the removed material with tarps and drove off. Many theorists have said that this was a sign of the government removing any other evidence they had. For them to be fixing the roads at night, it was clear that this was an effort to hide the physical traces of the UFO encounter. UFO investigators and supporters couldn't believe it when something shocking happened. Cash and Landrum passed away, with many saying this could be because of the radiation from the strange extraterrestrial craft. Witnesses passing away. In the years after the encounter with the UFO, the physical toll on Betty Cash and Vicki Landrum didn't disappear once the headline had faded. Both women struggled with different health problems that many supporters of the case connected to their bizarre experience in December 1980. Within hours of seeing the strange craft and accompanying helicopters, all three witnesses became violently ill with symptoms like nausea, vomiting, burning sensations on the skin, and later blisters and hair loss. The symptoms some medical observers at the time noted were similar to radiation exposure. Betty had the most intense symptoms of the three and saw her life transformed in the months and years that followed. She was hospitalized and continued to experience chronic health issues that required repeated medical care. She was treated for conditions that included recurrent burns and other unexplained symptoms, and later developed serious illnesses such as cancer, which she and supporters of the case attributed to her exposure during the incident. By December 29, 1998, exactly 18 years after the sighting, Betty died at the age of 69. Many suspected that the illnesses she faced were most likely because of that sighting. Vicki Landrum also confronted lingering health challenges throughout her life. While her symptoms were generally reported as less severe than Betty's, she continued to deal with effects like skin and vision issues that persisted over time. Vicki eventually passed away on September 12, 2007, at the age of 83, with many in the UFO community reflecting on the long shadow that the strange night had cast over her years afterward. Fighter jet chases UFO over China. But this isn't the first time witnesses have spotted a fighter jet chasing a strange UFO. Years after the incident happened with Cash and Landrum, over 100 witnesses spotted a strange UFO in the sky. To their surprise, there was a fighter jet chasing after it. Just after 8:00 p.m., 4 separate military radar stations at a flight training base picked up an unknown blip in the sky above the facility. After confirming that the signal did not match any scheduled civilian aircraft or known military flights, base commanders concluded that an unidentified object was present in restricted airspace and scrambled an interceptor to investigate. At least 140 people on the ground witnessed the strange object, which first looked like a small star in the distance. They couldn't believe it when the UFO appeared to descend, and it grew larger and became easier to see with the naked eye. Witnesses described the craft as having a mushroom-shaped dome on top and a flat underside dotted with bright, constantly rotating lights. This was a configuration unlike that of any standard aircraft known to observers. The jet sent up to investigate was a Jianjiao 6 JJ-6 fighter, a Chinese military interceptor with a pilot and a radar officer aboard. As the fighter climbed to engage the object over Qing County, the 2 officers reported seeing something that reminded them of the flying machines they had seen in science fiction films, a small detail that added an element of surrealism to the encounter. As the Jianjiao 6 closed within 4,000 meters of the unidentified craft, the situation quickly took a dramatic turn. The object suddenly shot upward with exceptional speed, easily pulling away from the interceptor and evading its approach. What made this encounter even more shocking was the movement pattern of the object. It seemed like it was toying with the fighter jet, reappearing directly above it or at unpredictable positions in the sky. During the aerial chase, the pilot asked for permission from ground control to engage the object with the plane's automatic cannon, but that request was denied. Instead, he was ordered to continue observation and pursue the unknown target. Even if the fighter was capable, it started to reach its limit. It climbed higher and higher, up to around 12,000 meters. Suddenly, fuel levels dropped, forcing the pilot to break off the chase and return to base. Before China could even respond, the UFO vanished from sight, leaving more questions than answers. The NASA scientist who stayed on top of this investigation has finally released the clearest UFO footage from that incident, shocking the world. What do you think the strange aircraft was? A government experimental craft or something from outer space? Let's know your thoughts in the comments. Let us know your thoughts in the comments. So, thanks for watching this video, and we will see you in the next one.